served in a variety of roles within the office and as appellate chief. He personally wrote more than 200 briefs and argued 37 federal appeals. After receiving blue slips from both Tennessee senators, Mr. Ritz was confirmed by the Senate to be U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Tennessee by a voice vote in September of 2022. In that role, he serves as the Chief Federal Law Enforcement Officer for the 22 counties of the district and supervises the other attorneys in the office. As U.S. Attorney, Mr. Ritz created the National Security and Civil Rights Unit within the criminal division of his office. He also regularly meets with and convenes law enforcement and community partners to discuss violent crime reduction efforts and other priorities. I congratulate Mr. Ritz and his family on his nomination and look forward to hearing his testimony today. Senator Blackburn is asked to make remarks, and I now recognize her for 3 minutes. Senator Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me begin by saying just how disappointed I am that the Biden administration has once again shown little regard for the long-standing bipartisan tradition of consulting home state senators on judicial nominees. Senator Hagerty and I attempted to work in good faith with the administration. We identified highly qualified nominees to fill this vacancy, but unfortunately, the White House had other plans. It is abundantly clear that despite the White House assurances to the contrary, there was a backroom deal to appoint Mr. Ritz to this vacancy from the very start. But the most glaring example of the White House outright refusal to consult is the fact that they have not even bothered to ask what our objections to Mr. Ritz might be. Had they done so, I would have explained my serious concerns about his professional ethics, concerns that should alarm those in the White House pushing his nomination, and concerns that we have heard from many of his peers. In our country, every individual accused of a crime is entitled to due process under the law. That is a bedrock principle of justice. But that's not how Mr. Ritz has operated as a prosecutor. Mr. Ritz has been accused of using highly unethical bait-and-switch tactics to trick indigent criminal defendants into accepting plea deals they didn't agree to. And when defense attorneys pushed back, Mr. Ritz has been accused of making outright false statements to the court to cover up his misdeeds. Indeed, Mr. Ritz has chosen to surround himself with those who seemingly treat their ethical obligations with disdain. Mr. Ritz's deputy, for example, received a 1-year probation for prosecutorial misconduct. We have heard from many of his peers and colleagues. You don't have to take my word for it. Just ask Stephen Shankman, the former federal public defender for the Western District of Tennessee. Mr. Ritz has such a reputation for unethical behavior that when Mr. Shankman first heard reports of a prosecutor behaving unethically, he knew it had to be Kevin Ritz. Writing about Mr. Ritz, Mr. Shankman said, and I quote, "This is not the first, second, third, or whatever occasion that this sort of thing has occurred, but everyone should be aware of this unfortunate pattern of behavior. You should be aware, your clients should be aware, and you should proceed with extreme caution," end quote. You should proceed with extreme caution. What an admonition. Is that how the American citizen should be made to feel if they were to go into a courtroom with the presiding judge being Kevin Ritz? With an ethical record like this, I question how the ABA could give him any rating other than not qualified. He has no business representing the United States in a courtroom, let alone presiding as a judge with a lifetime appointment. But Mr. Ritz's record of unethical behavior isn't my only objection. Under his watch, As the chief federal law enforcement officer, the city of Memphis has become the most dangerous place to live in the United States. That is a fact. In 2023, Memphis had the most homicides in its history, and data shows that 2024 homicides are going to outpace 2023. Law and order has completely collapsed in Memphis under his leadership, and there is no more tragic example than last week's murder of a Memphis police officer. Officer Joseph McKinney was shot and killed on Friday by a criminal who had been arrested just weeks prior for 4 felonies, including unlawful possession of a weapon and possession of an illegal Glock switch. Make no mistake, the criminal would not have been out on the streets but for Mr. Ritz falling asleep at the wheel. His inaction has cost lives. Prior to Mr. Ritz's tenure, the U.S. Attorney's Office had a policy of charging 100% of prosecutable gun crimes. Why Mr. Ritz did not follow through on this, I do not understand. But we do know a police officer, a father, and a Memphian, they are dead because of Mr. Ritz's lack of leadership.
Senator, your time
Thank
has
you,
expired.
Mr. Chairman.
Let me say at the outset that Mr. Ritz will be before this committee for questions from all senators and have an opportunity to respond. Senator Blackburn asked for this special privilege of speaking out of turn, and I gave it to her and extended her time an additional 2 or 3 minutes in an effort to accommodate her in a fair fashion. Let me say at the outset, Mr. Ritz has been judged by the American Bar Association. To judge him and his prospective nomination, they contacted attorneys in the area as well as judges. Their conclusion, unanimously well qualified. Unanimously well qualified. If that sounds different than what you just heard, it is. Second, I want to address this notion that we have some kind of backroom deal here. The senator has been selective in talking about the facts that led to this nomination. Let me tell you the history. It takes a minute or two, but it's worth it. As many of you may know in this room, blue slips are literally blue slips of paper issued by this committee as a courtesy in order to seek input from colleagues on nominees from their home states. During the Obama administration, Senator Leahy chaired the committee and honored blue slips for both circuit and district court nominations. If a senator did not return a blue slip for a nomination from his state or her state, that individual nominee did not move forward. That was the tradition under Senator Leahy. As a result, Senate Republicans held multiple circuit seats open during the Obama administration that President Trump later filled. Both parties do that. But when Senate Democrats expressed reservations with President Trump's picks for circuit seats in their states, Senate Republicans reversed their thinking. They did away, the Republicans when they were in charge, did away with blue slips for circuit court vacancies and held hearings on 18 circuit court nominees who did not receive blue slips from their home state senators. I objected at the time, as did many of my colleagues, but we also repeatedly warned the Republicans were establishing new ground rules when it came to blue slips for circuit court judges. I've said it many times, there cannot be one set of rules for Republican nominees and another for Democratic nominees. So today and throughout this session, I am following the same standard the Senate Republicans set. Senate Republicans confirmed a nominee to the Third Circuit after the Trump White House refused to let Democratic home state senators even meet with him. Another Third Circuit nominee was informed that he would be nominated weeks before the Trump White House had a single conversation about the vacancy with Senator Casey of Pennsylvania. And the Trump White House counsel informed Senator Baldwin of Wisconsin during their very first conversation about a Seventh Circuit vacancy at the White House that they'd already selected a nominee without her knowledge. That doesn't seem like much consultation to me, but Senate Republicans said it was plenty. Given that history, the White House consulted with the Tennessee senators on this very vacancy, significantly more than precedent requires. The White House has been discussing this Senate seat with the Tennessee senators since August of 2023. They exchanged names of potential candidates in October of 2023. Mr. Ritz interviewed with members of the Tennessee Senators' staffs in both October and November 2023. The White House Counsel's Office interviewed the Tennessee Senators' suggested candidates in November of 2023. The White House then gave the Tennessee Senators the opportunity to choose from 3 candidates, including Mr. Ritz. The Tennessee Senators refused to do so. The White House also repeatedly offered the Tennessee Senators the opportunity to interview Mr. Ritz. Senator Blackburn did not take them up on the offer until March of this year, and Senator Haggerty did not conduct an interview of Mr. Ritz until yesterday. My Democratic colleagues would have been grateful to receive such courtesy from the Trump White House. But what did Senator Blackburn offer instead? Calling this a backroom deal. Senators Blackburn and Haggerty may have preferred another individual for the vacancy, but consistent with precedents set by former Republican chairs of the committee, we will proceed with the hearing for Mr. Ritz. It's now time to call
Mr. Chairman, there are inaccuracies in your statement. I'll be happy to submit a timeline and the fact that on Christmas Eve we received an email that they were going to nominate Mr. Ritz, but I'll submit those in writing for you.
Thank you very much, Senator. First panel is Mr. Ritz, and will you please approach the table as they change the nameplates.